Good morning, everybody. This is my coronavirus update for, actually, it's April 15th now, 2020, and I'm very excited that here it is, it's tax day, or it would have been tax day in the old days, but I guess it's not now. It's been extended, I believe, till July 15th, but don't take my word on that. So I have the usual tables here where I sort everything by case fatality. That's the probability of dying if one has the coronavirus, is tested positive. But as you'll see later, I'll talk about testing, and I don't trust our tests that we have right now, but that's what you're not supposed to trust them if you're in public health fully. So right now, the case fatality is highest in Belgium, changes from day to day, followed by Italy. So it's a 13% chance of dying if you are infected with the coronavirus in Belgium. Then you have Italy. You see that this is the prevalence, the number of cases per 100,000. It's 190 in Belgium, not necessarily the highest. The red ones are the ones that are like critical to me because their case fatalities are above 10. The yellow ones are from anywhere below 10 to 2, just down to 2%. But the United States here in the middle, it's kind of higher than the middle. We're at 4.4% case fatality rate, 162 in terms of prevalence per 100,000. I have Denmark listed here because Denmark is supposed to today let kids go back to school, and I'm kind of curious of what's going to happen with them. So it's kind of like a natural experiment, unfortunately. There's some countries that have really, really high prevalences, like Luxembourg, but Luxembourg has 438, and it's been like this for a while. It's been really high per 100,000, but that's also because of their high population density, smaller country, smaller population. These countries, I consider them in the green. They're not as much of a problem. I included Monaco because Monaco is an extremely wealthy area, and you can see their case fatality is very low. So that says something about the relation between wealth and mortality. And we look at averages. I trust the median more when it comes to, especially to the prevalence. We're about 54 versus, see, if you look at the average, it's very high because it's skewed by countries like, say, Luxembourg. And then if we look at the case fatalities, it's around 4 if you take these two, average and median. Let's see, our usual figures for the day. It looks like there is some hope here in the U.S. We're starting to see a decline, a flattening of the curve, as some people like to say it. And then if we compare the U.S. to Italy in green and Spain, we're kind of converging, but we're all kind of flattening. So this is good news, saying that people staying at home is probably helping, which is really nice. And then of course there's South Korea, which is so way ahead of us that I shouldn't even include them in this figure anymore. It's like, might as well be our x-axis. The usual figures I have here looking at case fatality and how it's related to number of hospital beds per 1,000 by country. I sorted this from highest to lowest in terms of case fatality here in gray. And in blue we see blue is the number of hospitals per 1,000. The orange curve is the proportion of the population above 65. So they mirror each other in all the countries with lower case fatalities, but in Italy and Spain and a few other countries like UK and France, there's a gap here, and you can see that in Belgium, there's a lot of deaths in those areas. So you can see that there is a relation between the two, right? If we're not prepared to take care of our elderly, we have greater mortality. And this is what I call the HB65 index. So it's hospital beds divided by proportion of population above 65 or above. This is looking at case fatality. As it goes down, this ratio, HB65, goes up. So there's a clear relation there. Of course, we have to test it for significance, which I did. So I actually looked at two things. I ran these regression analyses. This is running the process macro by Hayes. So anybody who is into mediation and moderation modeling, we use this a lot. And I have a regression model, which is a predictive model. So we could use this to predict how many, we could actually take this out and make a prediction. This is your regression equation with the intercept, and all these are all the slope values in a line. I also, for variables like hospital and density, I centered them at the mean, so that creates a different kind of variable all of a sudden. It's the same numbers, but it's just centered, so you subtract the mean from each value. And what we see here is that hospitals, this is hospital beds per 1,000 individuals, has a negative relation to case fatality, and this is log case fatality. Case fatality is log transform. And then we also see that as the proportion of the population increases above 65, there's a significant positive relation to the mortality here. So I tried an interaction, and today that interaction didn't work out. It varies, of course, by changes in case fatality, etc. So that's why it's every time we test this model, it becomes more valid, I should say, because we have more and more cases. And again, I've only selected countries with the highest levels of case fatalities and prevalences from the beginning, and where I think there are reliable data. Finally, I tested this HB65 in the figure that we saw earlier, and indeed it had a very nice, significant relation with case fatality. So here's this ratio, and its probability value is very, very low. It's less than 0.0001. If you don't know what probability values are and all that stuff, you should tune into some other. I have videos about this in other places, explaining how to understand these. I also wanted to repeat this figure that I had from the other day, where we looked at sensitivity and specificity and positive predictive value and net sensitivity, because the tests that are being done are not that great, but that's normal. Like this antibody test has a sensitivity of, where's the antibody test? Yes, it has a sensitivity, the best values I could find right now, of 0.8866 and a specificity of 0.9063. What does that mean? Sensitivity is the probability of testing positive if you're disease positive. So you go to your healthcare provider, you take the test, and you have the disease, and you test positive, say 89% of the time. That means 11% of the time you'll be a false negative, or you're told that you don't have it when you actually do, and you'll go around and maybe infect other people. Specificity is the probability of testing negative given that you're disease negative. That probability is 0.91 basically, right? So here, what does that mean? That means if you don't have the disease, you should be told that you don't have the disease. You should test negative. That'll happen 91% of the time. That means 9% of the time you'll be told you have the disease when you actually don't. So that kind of sucks. So I took the U.S. population and the current prevalence, and I showed you those earlier, in the United States, and if everything goes as it should be based on this prevalence, we'd have 532,771 cases in the United States, true cases, and of those testing positive, we should have agreement here, tested positive given your disease positive, among 472,355. That means it'd be 60,416 false negatives. What's more intriguing to me is what we have the false positives of. So if we took this specificity value, we correctly identify about 298 million people as being negative, but that means we'd have 30,812,680 false positives. So we get a lot of false positives. That's something that you need to think about when you think about testing. The latest information I have on this really groundbreaking, as the authors call it, testing that you can do through cotton swabs, I guess a swab from your throat or your nasal cavity, has a sensitivity of only 0.8 and a specificity of a whopping 0.73, which is really, really bad. So that means these are the tests that you get when you go to the drive-thrus, like picking up your burger or something like that. Well, what would that result in? That would result in 106,000 false negatives, almost 106,500 false negatives, and a whopping 89 million false positives. So this is something that you need to understand when it comes to testing, that these tests are not as valid as we think they are. It's really hard to do it, and without peer review, people can make any kind of claim that they want, and we're trying to forego peer review to hurry things out, to get them into the public. So I also calculated net sensitivity. I didn't do net specificity. Well, actually I did net sensitivity and net specificity. Let's see, I don't have those values here, but I can explain what they are. So the way you do that is when we do testing, we usually will identify a person through the cotton swab first, and then if that is significant, like if you test positive, then you go through second testing. So let's assume you do the cotton swab first, and then after that you'd do the more invasive blood test, right, to see if you have antibodies. So if we did that, what would be the net sensitivity, or the probability of testing positive given your disease positive across those tests? And this is what I call sequential testing. So let me run that really quickly here for you all. This is using like a multiplication rule of probability, because you have to test positive on the first and the second. So we use a sensitivity for the first one would be 0.8, and we'd multiply that times the sensitivity for the second one, which is 0.8866, for a whopping net sensitivity of 71%. That's pretty low, right? But that's expected to happen. Net specificity will be a lot higher, because to be considered negative, you have to test negative either on the first or the second. So if you test negative on the first, then you don't have to worry about it again. So let's try to remember this 70928. The way we calculate that is we'd use the addition rule in probability. So let's clear this here, and then we'd have here the specificity in the first test is 0.73, and we'd add to that the specificity in the second test, which is 0.9063, 0.9063, and we'd have to subtract from it the possibility of them being both testing positive both on the first and the second, and that was whatever that value we just had a moment ago. So that'd be 0.8 times 0.8866. I think I put the wrong value in here, because this should be this was no, net specificity, so it was right actually. Hold on, let me go back here. Let's clear that for a second and run that again. So I had 0.73 plus 0.9063, and we subtract them testing negative on both, because that is theoretically possible. So that would be 0.73 times 0.9063, and that would equal about 97%, which makes sense, because net specificity, like I said, would be higher than net sensitivity. Well, anyway, I hope this is interesting information for you, something that you could either learn from or maybe ease your worries a little bit. Stay safe, everybody. Bye.